Welcome to Expat Hoops, where we chronicle the journeys of basketball players as they tell us about their time playing professional basketball overseas. Today, we talk with former Texas Tech standout player Todd Gotcher. He played 5 seasons in Lubbock before heading overseas to play in leagues around the Mediterranean. He is currently signed to play on Greek First League team Trikoupis Messalongi. Todd, welcome to Expat Hoops.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be here, guys.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're really happy to have you. I wanted to start off actually with how you got to Texas Tech. I know it's been kind of touched on in other interviews. Chris Beard, now the head coach at Texas Tech, was the associate head coach in recruiting you. Could you talk a little bit about your experience being recruited by him and what that experience was like?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Coach Chris Beard, Texas Tech was actually the first offer that I received as a high school athlete. My sophomore year in high school, Coach Beard was at most of my practices, and I didn't even think I was that good, but he noticed me, and he was always brutally honest with me. Hey, you need to work on this. You need to get better at this. As a sophomore, and it built a trust with me that I know I can depend on him, and he'll always be honest with me, because recruiters sometimes will give you, they want you to think whatever they want to think, but he's been a great guy since, and we built a great connection.
It's interesting. So I know sometimes you could look back on somebody and be like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that this person is where they are now. But would you say that high school, you probably envisioned some level of success that he would have now?
I would. Obviously, he turned it up to a whole nother level. I knew he was going to be a head coach one day because of how, and I just knew one day, I didn't know if it was at Texas Tech or elsewhere, but he'll be a head coach and he'll be successful just based off the guys that he recruit and the program that he wants to build. So he gave me his vision a long time ago, and now everyone's starting to see what it is.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting to me, like looking over his career trajectory. He was at Texas Tech for about 10 years as an associate head coach, and then sort of went off as like some semi-pro team in South Carolina, and then obviously burst onto the scene with Little Rock and everything like that. It's just kind of an interesting trajectory for somebody, and I think that Tony and I have kind of talked about this. Is almost a little bit going off topic, but Brad Underwood, now at Illinois, and him, to me, kind of have some of the more interesting paths to where they are. And it's sort of, they're the two coaches I look at currently where I'm like, really feel like somebody should have given them an opportunity a lot beforehand for a head coaching job.
Right, and I agree with that too. Brad Underwood, he was at SFA, I believe.
Yep.
And he kind of, his assistants kind of recruited me there too as well. So I kind of knew a little bit about him, and those two guys. I mean, I'm happy to see what they're doing and how successful they are. So I definitely agree with you on that for sure.
So you had a redshirt season while you're in college. You had a foot injury. The redshirt season that you have, tell us a little bit about the injury that you had and how that affected you going forward. I know that you ended up about 5 years at Texas Tech.
Yes, sir. So I claimed that my foot injury, I broke the middle of my foot. And my freshman year, I was devastated. I was playing good minutes at the time under Billy Gillespie, but I would consider it a blessing in disguise because I actually had time to take a step back, understand the game from a different viewpoint, whether see what the coaches see how to make plays as a freshman. And some guys don't; they just get thrown in the fire. So I think that year really helped me understand the game of basketball and how to approach it for sure mentally.
And so you went from Billy Gillespie under a year, you were redshirted at him, you played 9 games. So you didn't have a lot of experience under him, but you had some experience. Then Tubby Smith comes in. Interesting that you were coached by former current Kentucky coaches just at Texas Tech while you were there. So you got a little taste of both. But Tubby Smith, you were obviously under a lot longer. You were there under him for 4 years. Did a Canadian tour in 2015. So under Tubby Smith, what would you say was something that you learned from his particular coaching style that helps you now?
Most importantly was how to become a man. Honestly, I learned most of my things off the court with him. How to carry myself, how to shake a hand, how to look someone in the eye. Just little things like that that will last a lifetime. Um, I look up to him now. We still have a great relationship. I can call him. He calls me randomly. So it's just good to carry that on. And um, I have a wife and a daughter now. So how to be a man and a father is what I learned most from Coach Tubby Smith for sure.
And speaking of off the court stuff, you did a Canadian tour with him and Texas Tech in 2015, and we call our show Overseas, and obviously Canada isn't really overseas, but it's over a border. And did this
Right.
playing experience that you had in college in a foreign country, did this help you give you any sort of window into what sort of experience you might have in the future?
The Canadian tour, I would say it was more Americanized than
Hmm.
anything. It was almost like a glorified American university, if I had to put it, because we played McGill University, which was
Ooh.
the champions every year in Canada. So we had a series with them, and they were top notch. They were the Duke of Canada, so it was a good tour for us. And but overseas, it didn't give me that feel, but it was definitely a good opportunity to see other basketball played for sure.
So probably the most we're getting out of this then, if you're playing McGill, which I believe is in Montreal, right?
Yes,
Okay, I thought so. I think that so Montreal is kind of a European feel of a city, so we'll go with that.
absolutely. I did hear some French speaking, so that kind of helped too.
There you go. It counts. We're moving on. So one of the things that was interesting, I was going back through the Facebook feed and doing the research for this. There was a post that you had right as you were coming out in 2016. Although you entered your name into the draft and everything, that basically you said came to the conclusion I'm declaring for the draft, but overseas is where I will make my mark. At what point did you kind of think to yourself, okay, if the NBA happens, it's great, but I'm probably somebody that's more overseas, and I'm looking to do really well there. I'm sure that's probably a different way to kind of recalibrate your mindset because everybody dreams of playing in the NBA, but there's also really good opportunities overseas. And like, how did you kind of get to that point and realizing that? When did that kind of happen for you in your college career?
Well, it happened more my junior year. I had teammates, former teammates that went overseas, made great money, have great careers overseas, and I looked up. They were my roommates at the time. We were both in college, so I knew, like, I know myself. I wasn't on any radar coming out of college, or I wouldn't be. So I knew that the lifestyle. I've always wanted to travel, so the lifestyle that they live over there was where I think I would fit perfectly, and it actually panned out almost the way I wanted it to. So I'm pretty happy where I'm at, and I get to see the world while playing basketball.
And so I think you kind of actually hinted on this. So what were the conversations like with your roommates? Because my question was going to be how well versed, prepared were you say you were in going overseas? Like what were the conversations like between you and your roommates that sort of led you down that path of saying, all right, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be. What are some things to look out for as I'm going to a foreign country, wherever that might be?
Right. The most important thing was discipline. I My teammates knew that I was a disciplined guy, and that's what it takes to be overseas because you're here alone, a lot of distractions. It's really nothing to do here as far as if you're by yourself. So those conversations were more like, what do I need to work on? How do I need to look at the game mentally? And the first thing that they told me was to watch EuroLeague basketball. And once I did that, I fell in love with the game because it's completely different from an NBA game, and that that fit me well, and I was very interested from then on.
And that's definitely something that we'll hit a little bit later on, in terms of the style of the game. That was definitely a question I had for you. But um, before we get into your actual career, if you wouldn't mind taking us through what your process was like. Okay, senior year, you throwing your hat in the ring for the NBA draft, but what was the process of finding an agent? Did you do any sort of tournaments or anything like that to get on the radar, so to speak, of the European teams, because you actually started out at a pretty high level right out of the gate, which is sometimes not a common experience with some of the guests that we've talked to, where they've kind of had to build themselves up, whereas you went right into the Greece top league.
Right. Well, my first thing, my agent, my AAU coach really helped me out a lot. He had former players himself that went overseas, so it kind of helped me tailor my way to who and what type of agent I needed. And I mean, the team in Greece gave me a chance, and it was really helpful getting that opportunity to show skill at that top level for sure.
Going through some of your pro career, you've played mostly around the Mediterranean. You've spent the I guess the lion's share of your time in Greece, though you've also been in France and Turkey. And I guess part of what I wanted to ask you about that, what have you seen as the differences between some of those leagues as you've gone forward? Because you started in Greece, you've been with a couple of different Greek teams. The general disposition of the fans there, especially, is something that we always talk about, especially in the Mediterranean area and Turkey as well. And so now you're on about your third stint with Greece after being with France and Turkey. Compare and contrast the fans of those teams, if you could.
I would say first, like in Greece, I mean, it's basically my second home. I love everything about it. The people, the fans, as you claimed before, they're very passionate. That's the most important thing, especially in Turkey. I believe they may be more passionate than the Greeks. For example, if you have a good game, you get a lot of love on your social media, and this if you have a bad game, you get a lot of reviews, and people will say whatever they want, but it's part of our job, so I embrace it. I love every bit of it, and I never take it to heart because I'm always never too high and never too low. So it's good that the fans interact with us at all times.
You gave an interview of where you touched on the fact that the NBA had shut down due to COVID. Most overseas leagues had either shut down or delayed things at the start of last year and through much of last year. Turkey did not. And you were in Turkey for at least some of the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic, and the middle parts of last year. What was that like playing in a country that was still playing basketball? There wasn't the outbreak there was different in some other places, and so you didn't miss a lot of basketball, is my understanding. What was that like?
Well, it was very difficult having a family back in America, wondering when am I coming home and am I safe out here? Because at one point, Turkey is a huge country, and while we were playing, they released that there are only two cases at the time we were playing. And in Istanbul, we were like, we know for sure there are multiple, like, a lot more cases than what you're trying to tell us. So it was a difficult situation to really focus on basketball as the whole world is going through this. So luckily they shut it down, and I actually went home before they allowed me to. I kind of told them, hey, I have to go home to my family. So it worked out perfectly though.
Was anybody on your team affected by that at the time, just before they shut down?
Actually, no one was affected. They kind of kept us isolated. We were told not to leave our house just because of the basketball league told all the players we can't go anywhere. So no one was affected though.
It's good to hear. Backing up a little bit, still in Turkey, but before COVID has the outbreak, you actually had to deal with some departures of some notable American teammates to other leagues. And after a while, you were the lone American. Can you kind of tell us about that experience, how you adapted to be the only American and how you related to your other teammates? And I'm sure at this point, this is about 4 years into your career or so, that probably helped you as well, that you were a veteran and you kind of knew what to expect. Could you kind of talk about what it was like being the only American left and, just basically relating to teammates that are essentially probably all Turkish at that point?
Absolutely. It was like you said before, luckily this is my 4th year, so I knew what to expect, but we lost some very valuable American guys that have EuroLeague experience. James McAdoo won 2 championships for the Warriors. So it was luckily I have great relationships with all the Turkish players, and they took me in as one of them. Actually, we did everything together, but it gave me a bigger role. So I believe it helped me out to where at the beginning of the season I was a defensive player and I shoot threes. Now I had to pretty much handle the ball and do a lot much more, and my role got bigger. So it helped my career out a lot with that going on.
Now, here's an interesting question. You alluded to some of the American teammates that you lost, some of them having EuroLeague experience. And here's where we're going to have a listener question coming your way from, we'll just say Shaquille M. What were your thoughts on playing with Shaquille McKissick?
Oh, man, he's a great friend, wonderful friend, man. As you see now, what he's showing in the EuroLeague right now is what I saw every day in practice. We guarded each other, so he helped me become a better player and a better person, and he'll be my friend forever. So shout out to Shaq McKenzie.
Well, and here's the follow-up question that he also had for you. He said you'd know what this would mean. He asked me to ask you, who are you trying to impress?
So that's a question we came up with. When we did things, we always ask, okay, so you dunk, who are you trying to impress now? So it's the thing between me and him, and that's what keeps us close, man. And I love him for that. So that's hilarious. He brought that up.
No, I told him this morning as I was waiting. I was like, by the way, we're having him on today. Any questions that you have, send him my way. He's just like, he'll know what I mean. Just ask him that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So you also spent some time in just before you there in Skopje playing basketball in Macedonia. So far, you're the only person that we've had that played any basketball whatsoever in Macedonia. Tell us a little bit about that league and your experience there.
That league is a lot different from every other league that I've played in Europe. The philosophy, the athleticism. Number one thing with Macedonia is everyone can shoot 1 through 5. No matter they're out of shape, anything different, they can shoot the basketball. And it was a good experience for me, especially to play in the ABA 2 league. I like the league a lot, and it would be good for rookies to play in that league for sure.
Now, it's kind of something that we've asked a lot of our guests, and going through your Twitter feed, somebody actually asked you this not too long ago. I would say maybe about a week or so ago, but your description of the actual countries that you've played in terms of style of play. But is that something you mind going over again, just to kind of tell our listeners, France, Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, what are the differences?
Of course, France, a lot up tempo, fast pace, a lot of athletes in the league, very high level, and probably the most professional league in the world, in my opinion, as far as overseas. Turkey, lots of talent. I think the best brand of basketball other than Spain. Just a lot high Q guys and just a lot of talent, both Turkish and Americans. Greece, a lot of strategy, slower but high IQ guys, and very physical, probably the most physical league in Europe. and my last is Macedonia, which was, as I said, everyone shoots the ball and you have to close out with high hands or it's a three coming your way because they'll rather have a three than a two. So that's pretty funny.
And actually, how would you, just kind of piggybacking on that question, how would you differentiate the physicalness of these different leagues? Like, for instance, some of them you're going to be less likely to get a call, essentially no blood, no foul. What's the differences there between officiating?
Uh, I'm still in Greece now, but Greece is, if you go to an opponent place, let's say if you go to Aris or Panathinaikos, you're not getting a call if you're the road team. So, and what's funny is the coaches will tell you before, like, do not expect the call, do not talk to the refs, or you're going to go dead, or it's something like that. But Turkish, I mean, once you get to the high level of the EuroLeague teams, you can't expect nothing easy. France is pretty equal, all 1 through 18, because there's one EuroLeague team and everybody else can beat everyone. So that's the biggest difference with officiating, I believe, in each country.
In the middle of COVID, this is definitely a topic that's it resonates now probably more than ever. But something you tweeted out about, how's your mental health? And you kind of talk about being an athlete overseas. Like you said, your family, at least, is primarily over here. I know they might visit you from time to time, but this has also been kind of a consistent theme with some of the people we've had on this show, where they're not necessarily much of a video game player. What is it that you like to do in order to keep your mind occupied and basically generally occupied while you're over there?
Right. So for me, I read tons of books. I aim for one book a week. I do puzzles, just anything to keep my mind off of time. Like, all you have is time over here other than practice. So as I was a rookie, when I was a rookie, everyone played videos and watched Netflix. And then a guy named Ryan Evans, he went to Wisconsin when I was in France, took me under his wing and said, listen, you have all this time to better yourself, to educate yourself. And I took that to heart, and it changed my life for the better, where now I'm educating myself with reading or just doing something to improve in my life instead of just, I believe, wasting time with video games. So that really stood out to me at a young age in Europe.
I got to tell you, as a person who does a lot of gaming, it's a good time suck sometimes. And hey, I can tell you something else. I learned a little bit about history from some games I played, so it's not all bad. But
Well,
I do definitely get your point in that regard.
well, the only thing with me is I'm pretty bad at video games. That's why
the truth comes out.
Yeah, so I'm very bad at video games, so I have no reason to play, so I'm good.
If you had a puzzle to suggest to someone, we're in the middle of the pandemic, and last year there was actually a massive puzzle shortage in the US. I don't know if you know this. Like, it was difficult to get any but the simplest puzzles in the US because everybody was getting these things and doing them. Do you have any that you might suggest that were good that you put together?
I have one. It frustrated me so much. It was 1,500 pieces, which took a month. And it was of Italy. I forgot what area. It wasn't the Amalfi Coast, but it was something sort of like that. And it was 1,500 pieces. And I would say do it with two people, though, for sure, to help out.
So here's a follow-up question. You mentioned books as well. What are some of your favorite books you're reading now?
My favorite book, Compound Effect, by Mr. Hardy. That's what I live by now. I'm reading one book by Richard Cohen called Blindsided, and it's really good. He has MS, or he's talking about him living with MS, and I mean, I've never touched this type of topic before, but it's very interesting and changes my perspective on life and injuries in basketball or something like that. So it's really good for what I'm doing now, for sure.
One thing I always like to touch on in our interviews is that for a lot of players who play overseas, the end of their careers can come a little bit quicker for some people. It can come suddenly, or it can become either by injury or by choice. It gets
Right.
grinding, as we're talking about here, to play overseas, sometimes be away from your family. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic, so everything's magnified in terms of the difficulty that you have to go through. So as far as what your plans are for the future, when the day comes that you have to hang it up, you're still pretty young. You still got a lot of time where you could possibly be playing if you choose to do so. What would you do after basketball when the day comes where you say, okay, it's time to go, time to head back to the United States or something like that, and find a job either post playing basketball or something else?
My first, the first thing that I wanted to do, I've always wanted to get in collegiate basketball. Like I said before, with my time with Tubby Smith, I pretty much asked him to try to be in every meeting with the coaches to just understand what they do day by day. And I've always wanted to be a collegiate coach at any level. It doesn't matter. And that's number one. And my number two, since I've been reading a lot, I would like to get into real estate as well. So those two are my top two things that I would like to look into as soon as I stop playing.
Might I suggest a career in real estate for former basketball players overseas in the Mediterranean? I understand that's an interest to people. Just a suggestion. We've had a few people on this podcast. It's like, you know what? I would love to live where I'm playing right now. And so maybe you can get on some of that.
That's a great thought. So I'll take that to heart for sure.
And
but
actually,
the only thing is my wife, she's not a big fan of Europe. I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's entirely out. As two married guys, we already know, we read between the lines. That's entirely out.
Yeah, it's out. So vacation house maybe, but living is out.
There you go. Same.
I was going to say, as a slight tangent on this, I know that there's a former George Mason basketball player that actually is from overseas that is a realtor over, I think, in Portugal. So we'll store that away. We'll talk off the pod.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask, where is your wife from in the U.S.?
She's from Texas as well.
Okay.
Longview, Texas.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that many parts of Europe are a far cry from central South Texas, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, it's a big difference. So she's not a big fan. But
yeah, and you'd be away from family. There'd be a distance, and I mean, obviously, as you well know, but once she goes over there, that's like, no, that's a little too much.
Exactly. So she's actually a nurse, and she loves what she's doing, which I don't understand, but I let her have it and she's happy. So that's number one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And certainly our thanks to her. I mean, even though we're not anywhere geographically near her, but seriously, nurses and doctors are doing such great work now. So she's certainly appreciated.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'll let her know for sure. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for watching this episode of Expat Hoops. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, throw us a comment below. Also, to get notified of when our new content is out, hit the logo to subscribe. If you want to watch even more, check out the video here on the end screen or head over to our channel's page for a lot more.